September 12, 2023. The gated community of Condo de Saavedra in Atizapan de Zaragoza, a suburb of Mexico City. At 6:00 p.m., security cameras catch a gray Kia SUV parked a few blocks from house number 36. A person in dark athletic gear gets out. Their face is hidden behind a mask. The man doesn't rush. He stops in the street and begins a series of stretching exercises, pretending he's warming up for a run. When he finishes, he walks toward the house where 18-year-old Ana Maria Serrano is inside, studying for her exams. For the next 40 minutes, there's no movement near the building on video. Inside the house, there is silence. No shouts, no sounds of a struggle. At 6:40 p.m., the same person appears in view of the camera again. He walks away from the house at a calm pace, not trying to run. The only difference is his mask. Now the man's wearing an accessory with a contrasting print that looks like a human skull. He gets into the car and drives off. A few hours later, a neighbor, asked by Ana Maria's parents to check on her, finds her body in the bedroom. The scene is staged to look like self-inflicted harm, but the 40 minutes of silence caught on camera and the change of masks become the key to exposing that staging. The investigation will determine that beneath the skull mask was a person the young woman's family had long thought of as perfect. The events of September 12, 2023 unfolded simultaneously in two parts of the world. While the sun was just tipping toward the horizon in Mexico City, Rome was deep into the evening. Ana Maria's parents, Jose and Jimena, were in Italy. This trip, planned to mark their 20th wedding anniversary, had been in the works for years and repeatedly postponed. They stayed in touch with Ana Maria, who had stayed home to continue her medical school studies through WhatsApp. She wrote about preparing for her exams and everyday things, but then the way she wrote suddenly changed. Jimena received a message that triggered immediate alarm. The text included the word tantito, a specific Mexican expression. For Ana Maria, who was raised by her Colombian mother and grew up bilingual with an emphasis on academic Spanish, using that kind of slang was out of character. The messages became short and started to resemble a farewell note. Jimena tried calling, but her daughter's phone went unanswered. The mother's panic was deepened by the fact that the Serrano family had always been close. The parents knew where their children were and who they spent time with. Unable to return to Mexico immediately, Jimena contacted a neighbor in the Condo de Saavedra community. She asked him to go into house number 36. When he found her unresponsive, the neighbor contacted the rescue service, but the responding medics could only confirm her death. From that moment, a quiet family vacation in Rome turned into coordinating with investigators thousands of miles from home. When the investigative team stepped into the second-floor bedroom, they were met with a scene that had clearly been prepared with care over the course of 40 minutes. The body of the 18-year-old young woman was positioned in a way meant to convince any observer that she had made the decision to take her own life. Ana Maria was found in a posture consistent with staged hanging or the use of a loop. Her body was restrained by an improvised ligature attached to a fixed piece of furniture. The presence of that loop and the specific point where it was secured created a visual illusion suggesting that she alone had taken that final step. At first glance, the absence of obvious damage or forced entry at the front door seemed to support that narrative. There were no overturned objects, no broken locks, nothing that immediately suggested outside interference. But a detailed forensic examination of the room quickly exposed several critical inconsistencies. The first red flag for specialists was the placement of certain items. Inside the bedroom, investigators found objects that had no place in the everyday life of a medical student: a dark navy baseball cap and a black protective face mask. These items did not belong to Ana Maria and had no connection to her personal belongings, which were neatly arranged where they belonged. The presence of male accessories in a closed room where the tragedy had just occurred became the first piece of physical evidence pointing to someone else being there. The final word came from the medical examiner. The autopsy determined that the cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation caused by external pressure to the neck. Examiners documented distinctive injuries to the skin and soft tissues that, from a technical standpoint, could not be self-inflicted under the circumstances staged in the bedroom. The official report stated clearly, the nature of the injuries and the final position of the body were completely incompatible with an act of self-harm. Investigators in the state of Mexico concluded that the offender did more than end Ana Maria's life. He took time to edit reality itself. Objects were moved, and the victim's posture was altered in an effort to steer the investigation down a false path. This detail later became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. The actions in the bedroom pointed to calculated thinking and a deliberate attempt to avoid responsibility. As evidence was collected, it became clear this was not a spontaneous incident, but a planned crime carried out by someone who knew exactly how life inside that house worked. To understand the full scope of what happened on September 12th, it's necessary to retrace the life that came to an end that evening. Ana Maria Serrano Céspedes was born on May 5, 2005. Her family had an international background. Ana Maria was Mexican by birth, with Colombian roots on her mother's side. Jimena, her mother, is a Colombian attorney who moved to Mexico after marrying José, an engineer by profession. Together with her older sister, Daniela, they formed a close-knit family in which the parents were always deeply aware of their daughter's social circle and daily activities. Ana Maria received her education at a prestigious German school, the Alexander von Humboldt College. She was a strong student and well-liked among her peers. Her academic performance and discipline set her apart, and she was known as someone who took her future seriously. In mid-2023, Ana Maria was accepted into the medical program at Universidad Panamericana in Mexico City. She began attending lectures that summer, just 2 months before her life ended. By the age of 18, she had a clear plan for the future, with medicine at its center. But it was during her final year of school that a new figure entered her life. Alan Gil Romero, a presence that would ultimately prove devastating for the entire family. Alan Gil Romero studied at the same prestigious Alexander von Humboldt German school as Ana Maria. They moved within the same social circle, shared mutual friends, and both maintained strong academic records. Teachers and classmates described Alan as polite, attentive, and charming. When the two began dating in their later school years, those around them saw the couple as a perfect match. Ana Maria's parents, José and Jimena, took a careful and responsible approach to their daughters' relationships. They met Alan personally, set clear boundaries for visits, and closely monitored Ana Maria's well-being. In their presence, he displayed manners and behavior that fully met the family's expectations. The relationship lasted for about 1.5 years, but later, as friends and family began to piece things together, they started to notice signs that didn't quite fit the picture of a perfect couple. Alan had begun to monitor Ana Maria's social interactions closely. At school events and private gatherings, he watched who she spoke to. If she simply chatted with another young man or accepted a dance, it triggered anger and outbursts from him. A pattern formed between them. Alan would repeatedly announce a breakup, only to come back days later, crying and promising to change. Those close to them got used to the emotional ups and downs, writing it off as typical teenage drama. But there were incidents that went far beyond ordinary disagreements. After Alan underwent surgery, Ana Maria came to visit him. During the visit, he smeared cake frosting on her face, calling it a joke. She ended up calling her mother in tears, begging to be picked up immediately from Alan's house. Another time, at a party, after an argument started by Alan, Anna Maria was seen crying in front of all the guests. These moments began to pile up, but through 2022 and early 2023, no one saw them as signs of a dangerous situation. To outsiders, it looked like the emotional turbulence of first love. But behind the scenes, Alan's behavior was turning into something darker. In June 2023, right after graduation, Anna Maria made the decision to end the relationship for good. Her reasoning wasn't just the long-distance challenge of Alan's upcoming move to Germany for school. She was also responding to his increasingly troubling behavior. There was clear evidence the relationship had become harmful, a handwritten letter from Alan himself. In that letter, he openly admitted his actions were toxic. He wrote about his intense jealousy, his need for control, and how his possessiveness was hurting her. He acknowledged the problem in writing, but that acknowledgement never translated into any real change. After the breakup, Alan began what prosecutors would later describe as a campaign of harassment. At first, his actions looked like attempts at reconciliation. Gifts and flowers were delivered to Anna Maria's home every week, especially sunflowers. But when he received no response, he changed tactics. His messages in chat apps became demanding. Alan insisted that she remove photos with another young man from her social media accounts. As a form of pressure, he resorted to blackmail, threatening to reveal details of her private life to her parents if she didn't comply with his conditions. Just days before September 12th, the situation escalated into direct interference. Anna Maria's personal laptop disappeared from her home. According to the investigation, it was Alan who took the device. Prosecutors believe the goal of that theft was to gain direct access to her passwords, messages, and personal accounts. This step made it clear that controlling his former partner's life had become his primary objective. Anna Maria documented this harassment in conversations with friends, openly discussing what was happening. By early September, the conflict had moved beyond emotional fallout and turned into systematic intrusion into her private life, recorded both in digital messages and later confirmed by witness statements. In early September 2023, as Anna Maria was preparing for her first exams at Universidad Panamericana, those closest to her were aware of a very real threat. The 18-year-old student did not hide from her friends that Alan Gil Romero's behavior had gone far beyond ordinary attempts to get back together. She repeatedly said a sentence that, after the events of September 12th, became central to witness testimony. "If anything happens to me, you already know who did it." She shared this warning with several people, and she said it more than once. Anna Maria directly identified her former partner as the only person capable of causing her harm. Despite this clear sense of danger, there were almost no legal tools available to protect her at that moment. Under Mexican law in 2023, filing a complaint based on repeated flower deliveries, sunflowers, and persistent messages demanding the removal of photos was not considered sufficient grounds for active police intervention or for issuing a restraining order. The situation was further complicated by the location where it all unfolded. The upscale gated community of Condo de Saavedra in Atizapan de Zaragoza was surrounded by high walls and monitored around the clock. With armed security at the entrance and a strict pass system in place, it created the illusion of complete protection from outside threats. Anna Maria valued her independence and didn't want to worry her parents, who were in Europe preparing to celebrate their wedding anniversary. She intentionally downplayed the incidents in conversations with Jose and Jimena, choosing to deal with the pressure on her own. Her friends saw the harassment escalate, but in the context of a quiet, upper-class suburb of Mexico City, Alan's actions were viewed more as emotional pressure than a sign of a potential physical attack. The neighborhood security system had been designed to keep out burglars and strangers, not someone who had once been close to the family and knew exactly how to access the home. In the end, Ana Maria was left alone with a threat that existed only in her own words, shared with friends just days before her death. The investigation later reconstructed Alan Gil Romero's movements on September 12th by analyzing gate security footage minute by minute. His first visit occurred at 3:55 a.m. A gray Kia SUV entered the community without license plates. Alan was wearing a dark navy cap and a black face covering. According to investigators, this was a scouting mission, a check to see if anyone else was in the house and to confirm when Ana Maria's parents had left. The second time the vehicle appeared was at 1:01 p.m., now with license plates reattached. Alan approached the house and spoke with the housekeeper. He asked if Ana Maria was home. When told she wasn't, he said he had brought a gift and would come back later. The witness noted that his behavior was odd, but at the time it didn't raise any red flags. Alan left the neighborhood only to return a third time, when Ana Maria was home alone. To reconstruct the exact timeline of that evening, we need to go back to 6 p.m., the moment Alan crossed the threshold of house number 36. At that hour, 18-year-old Ana Maria was in her second-floor bedroom. She was alone, studying for her medical school exams, and periodically replying to messages from her parents, who were in Rome at the time. According to investigators, Alan Gil Romero entered the room and carried out the attack within the very first minutes of being inside the house. The forensic examination later determined that the physical confrontation was brief. Alan restrained Ana Maria and applied force while she was in an upright position. Death occurred as a result of mechanical asphyxiation. Once he was certain she was no longer breathing, he moved on to the second phase of his plan, the staging, which took more than half an hour. The offender acted deliberately. He moved her body toward a heavy wardrobe, secured a cord to its internal bar, and tightened a loop around Ana Maria's neck, positioning her in a semi-seated posture. This setup was meant to convince anyone entering the room that the student had made the decision to take her own life. At the same time as the physical staging, Alan Gil Romero created digital evidence to support his version of events. He took Ana Maria's phone and, knowing the passcode, sent a message to her mother. The text was written to resemble a farewell confession. But this is where the plan began to unravel. The use of the slang word tantito immediately signaled to Jimena that someone else was writing on her daughter's behalf. In his haste, Alan made another critical mistake. He left behind a dark navy baseball cap and the first black face covering, the same items captured on security cameras during his nighttime and daytime visits. The offender believed that the illusion of order and the goodbye message would prompt authorities to close the case on the very first day. Instead, the forgotten items and the linguistic slip completely dismantled that scenario. 4 days after Ana Maria was found, on September 16, 2023, law enforcement in the state of Mexico moved into the active arrest phase. Alan was hiding in the municipality of Malinalco, a tourist town located roughly 60 miles from the scene of the crime. The arrest operation was coordinated as a joint effort between the state prosecutor's office, federal forces, and local police. Alan Gil Romero was located in a residential area of the city. The neighborhood was surrounded by armed officers to prevent any attempt to flee. He did not resist arrest. In the footage from the operation, he's seen dressed in civilian clothes, being escorted to a police vehicle under guard. Immediately after being taken into custody, Alan was transferred to Barrientos prison in the city of Tlalnepantla. On September 18th, a judge issued an order for pretrial detention, and the following day, Alan Gil Romero was officially charged. From the beginning, state prosecutors refused to treat the case as a standard crime. The death of Ana Maria was classified as femicide, a legal term in Mexico and several Latin American countries used when a person is killed because of her gender, often tied to hatred, a need for control, or a belief that the offender had ownership over the victim. Investigators supported this classification with evidence of harassment, blackmail, and Alan's continued efforts to control Ana Maria's life after their breakup. The evidence presented in court to justify the arrest was built on several critical elements. First were the timestamps from security cameras, placing Alan Gil Romero at house number 36 at the time the crime occurred. Second were the statements from the housekeeper, who identified him during his second visit to the home that day. Third were the physical items left behind, a mask and a dark baseball cap, matching those Alan had worn during his first and third visits to the neighborhood. A further piece of the prosecution's case came from digital forensics. Experts analyzed Ana Maria's phone and confirmed that the final messages to her mother were sent after her time of death. A stylistic review of the texts revealed writing patterns consistent with Alan Gil Romero, including specific words Ana Maria never used. Taken together, this body of evidence convinced the court to keep the accused in custody while awaiting trial. A trial Ana Maria's family hoped would begin soon. However, the legal process hit a wall. By early 2026, the case against Alan Gil Romero had yet to reach sentencing. More than 2 years had passed since his arrest, but Mexico's justice system had stalled. The defense adopted a delay strategy, using constitutional appeals to drag out proceedings. In May 2024, a key hearing was postponed after attorneys filed an amparo, a legal motion in Mexico that temporarily halts actions seen as violating individual rights. Throughout 2024 and 2025, court hearings were repeatedly postponed due to technicalities and procedural issues. The defense changed its legal team several times, which required additional time for new attorneys to review case materials. One major point of contention was access to the full video recording of a witness testimony given via Zoom from Germany. In September 2025, yet another hearing was paused by the judge to ensure the rights of both the victim's family and the accused were being upheld. The following month, in October 2025, a session that was meant to mark the beginning of the trial's oral phase was canceled again. Ana Maria's parents publicly accused the defense of systematically obstructing justice. According to them, the defense strategy was designed to reduce public interest and weaken witness recollections over time. Meanwhile, Alan's mother issued a public statement claiming her son's right to a speedy trial was being violated, continuing to insist on his innocence. As a result, both families now find themselves in a state of legal limbo. While attorneys argue over procedural rules, Alan Gil Romero remains in custody at Barrientos prison, officially awaiting trial. The final verdict in the death of the university student has yet to be delivered. While the case against Alan Gil Romero continues to move through the courts, Ana Maria's family has shifted their focus toward preventing similar tragedies. Jimena, drawing on her background in law and crisis management, established a foundation. The organization provides training for teachers, parents, and teens in schools across Mexico City. Its mission is to dismantle the myth that total control and jealousy are signs of deep affection. Jimena speaks at conferences, emphasizing that behaviors like checking a partner's phone or isolating them from their friends are early warning signs of abusive patterns. As of early 2026, the story of Ana Maria Serrano is still making headlines in Mexican media. Jimena is pursuing a master's degree focused on gender-based aggression, determined to fight professionally against the very system that allowed her daughter's trial to be delayed for over 2 years.